What the hell? Where am I? What's going on?
Bum, bum.
Huh? Oh god! What the hell are you?
Bum, 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 ba-da-dum. Time for Orville Season 3 reviews. Welcome back, one and all, friends, enemies, and everything in between. That's right, we're back here talking about the Orville Season 3, New Horizons. How are we all the way up to Episode 3 after this interminable wait that we had between seasons? I don't understand what's going on. What's happening with time? Is everything distorted? Nothing makes sense anymore. And if you're new here, I'm going to be spoiling the episode, talking through some of the things that happen and giving my thoughts. So if you're not into spoilers, I urge you really need to watch this episode blind. You don't want to go into this episode having things spoiled for you. It is worth watching again once you have the reveals of this episode, but if you're ever going to listen to me and watch an episode before getting things spoiled for you, this is probably going to be the one for that. Without further ado, I'm going to get into things, so last chance for your spoiler warning before we get into Episode 3 of the Orville, New Horizons, and it's called Mortality Paradox. And here we go. All right, we open on a shuttlecraft returning to the Orville after what appears to be some sort of vacation for Tala, the security chief, and she's returned a bit early. They were a bit shocked to have her come back, but that's okay. She was eager to get back to work after spending time with her family. You see here landing, departing from the shuttle. She goes immediately to Kelly to tell her that on the way back from her trip, she actually encountered some long-range scans of the Kalon, the bad cybernetic life form that we're currently in some sort of, it's going to say a Cold War with, but I think they're actively trying to eradicate us, so probably not so much of a Cold War. That's concerning because they're in a territory they shouldn't be. There's actually no confirmed life forms. So they're going to go check that out. She is giving the characters, our friends on the bridge here, some chocolate from Zalea, her home planet, and it is super dense. One thing you might need to know is that this is a very high gravity planet she hails from. That's why she's got the super strength, and that's why these chocolates are uber dense. I was going to say hyper dense. Don't know why I went with uber. Anyways, as they get closer to the planet, Isaac here is picking up some sort of scan that's indicating a hell of a lot of life on a planet that is supposed to be uninhabited. That's weird in and of itself. The Kalon signals being detected earlier. Shenanigans are definitely afoot. They're going to go investigate because that's what they're doing. They're seeking out new horizons. So they head down to the planet, and in the shuttlecraft, all they're really picking up are trees. It's a very dense forest. The scans, however, are indicating that there are giant metropolis, I guess, for lack of a better word. I believe Gordon describes it as the center of Manhattan. So they're picking up a giant city, but what they're seeing is just a forest. What's going on? They're going to land and find out, and lo and behold, as they trudge through the forest, what do they see? An early 21st century, looks to be probably American high school. What the hell is going on? This is not exactly what you would expect to find when you're on an alien planet, thousands of light years from home, or hundreds of light years. I'm not entirely sure how far, but still, think of the odds. Now, if this was Star Trek, and we were dealing with the whole parallel evolution thing, I guess it would probably be about 3-1, but we're not in Star Trek right now, so it's probably significantly higher odds than that. They go into the school, and now they are locked in. They cannot get out the door, and this reminded me specifically of the TNG episode, The Royale. Very similar premise as far as an uninhabited planet. Ooh, I just stumbled my way through that. That is exhibiting some sort of Earth-like construct where it shouldn't exist. They enter and are unable to exit. So that is what reminded me of the Royale. As we go along, there's going to be some other parallels, but I'll leave you to it for now. Going to try and blast through this because a lot of this is mysterious, but once you know what's going on, it's a fast-paced ride. Then, the inhabitants of the school exit the classrooms, and it's basically your typical high school scenario. They're changing classes, going to their lockers, having conversations. When our crew interact with them, they seem to be acting as if They don't notice they're aliens. They don't notice they're out of place. And they're just acting like typical high schoolers. There's bullies, there's jocks, there's teachers, the whole shebang. Very, very odd. Gordon ends up getting bullied in the bathroom because they claim he owes Randolph some money. What's going on with this? How can Gordon, a character or a person who is heretofore never been to this place, be bullied, and they claim they know him? They claim he owes this bully money. That's interesting. He gets physically injured. He gets a swirly twice, I believe. Cuts his nose, gets a couple bruises. So there are stakes. We are playing for stakes. This isn't just all in their head, at least as far as we could tell, because there are injuries. Now, the first thing that tells us this is not your typical high school, they are on the football field, and we find out who Randolph is, the bully. He is a giant 24-foot troll, or some, I don't even know how tall he is, with a giant freaking axe. Comes after our crew, starts attacking them, throwing them around. As I mentioned, Tala is a super strong one. The rest of them just typical humans, except for Bortus, who is a Mochlin, extra strong as well. But still no match for this giant troll ogre-looking thing, shooting their phasers or their blasters. Nothing seems to be affecting them. Then they pick up Gordon, and we get this shot of his eyes kind of going blank. While he's being held by the troll, Tala picks up a bleacher and just chucks it at the dude. He manages to fall, comes back to his wits, and they keep moving. They run through a door, and where should they appear? A freaking airplane. That's right. They just transferred from a high school football yard, went through the front door, a football yard, that's not how you say it, football field, and somehow they're on an airplane in mid-flight. It's not even on the tarmac. It's not sitting around. They are mid-flight on an airplane, and they are told to take their seats by some sort of hostess. She tells them that they need to take their seats. Obviously, there's several seats for them together, which is odd in and of itself. So they sit down. Now, cutting back to the rest of the crew, they've lost touch. So they send down a secondary shuttle to investigate what's going on. What should they find? Just a sandy desert planet with nothing around. Sand. I think there's some more sand over there. And then they see the shuttle. The original shuttle parked also in the sand. Not in the middle of a forest by a high school like our characters saw. Nobody on board the shuttle. No sign of our crew. So the mystery deepens. Our first crew of characters in this strange scenario. Our second group of characters come down to the planet to investigate. No sign of our crew. No sign of the locale where they landed. Only thing left is an empty shuttle. Dun, dun, dun. Bum, 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 bum. All right. They decide to break into the cockpit of the plane because it seems to be flying funny, and wouldn't you know it, not a single pilot. Must be on their coffee break. I don't know what's going on. Obviously, Gordon is a superb pilot in the 25th century, so he tries to take the controls. Maybe he's going to be able to get control of this plane, which is, of course, flying through a storm, because why wouldn't there also be a storm? Oh, my goodness. He takes the stick, tries to get this thing flying. The what's her name? Not the stewardess, the flight attendant, I think they're called. Not having it, not happy. So Kelly just punches her right in the nose, knocks her out. So good effort there. At least these characters, these people, whatever they are in this situation, they can be injured. They can be interacted with. So A+ for that, Kelly. Good job. Now Ed's turn. His eyes go blank for a little bit. Very interesting. This is very interesting. Something is amiss. And what's happening here is they explain that it seems to be like they're having an out-of-body experience for just a brief moment. They're saying it's a little more than just typical shock. They're kind of feeling like a weird removed from their body. So 2 down. Gordon happened first. Ed's happening here. They manage to kind of crash land the plane. They exit through the hatch, and where should they find themselves? Some weird red tunnels with some weird pods floating from the sky. Okay. Now, my first thought, going to take a brief break here. My first thought, being a fan of the prior seasons of the Orville, if you think back in the very first season, we ran into this high-tech culture. They were known as the Caliban. They abducted our crew and put them in a zoo. To secure our freedom, we ended up trading them a lot of crappy old TV like Real Housewives and just a lot of junky reality TV because they were fascinated with learning about other cultures that way. My first thought up until this point was that the Caliban had set up this planet as some sort of not paradise, but sort of like a holodeck kind of planet where they came to experience and interact with these trashy old human TV shows. They kind of recreated them so their culture could experience them. That was my first thought up to this point. I thought they were just recreating scenes from old movies, kind of mashing them up. But no, it is explained here that this is a Moclan, not mausoleum, like a funeral home or crypt, something along those lines. Anyways, these are Moclan corpses. And the way that the Moclan celebrate their dead is for 9 days after their departure from life. They hang them vertically in these little pods. And their ritual is they hang them for 9 days so that if they had any unfinished business left on the planet, they can attend to that before they go off to their final resting place. Kind of an interesting funerary custom. Nice to learn a bit of background about other cultures like that. But because this is not a human custom, not from human entertainment, which was given to the Caliban, this led me to believe my original thoughts were incorrect, and this was not a Caliban entertainment planet like I thought. Something else is going on. What is it? Not sure yet, but we'll soon find out because things are moving at a rapid pace. What happens? Well, one of the corpses breaks out of the tomb, grabs Bortus, starts choking him. It is Bortus. So a dead corpse of Bortus choking out our Bortus. His eyes go white. Tala finds some sort of panel on the wall, punches in some buttons, opens up a port so they can get out of there, beats him down a little bit. They get out. So now 3 of our characters have experienced this situation. They've gotten out of it. Where should we go next? Well, a creepy as all get out staircase in the middle of nothing, bottomless pit, nothing but the stairs, nothing above them, nothing below them, nothing to the sides of them, just an epic staircase to nowhere. Probably had 362,000 nightmares involving this exact situation. I have a lot of nightmares about dreams. Yes, I have nightmares about dreams. Isn't that weird? No, I have nightmares about elevators and stairs quite a bit. Obviously, you're going to leave things in the comments about what that means, but this is a very, very surreal thing. I dig it. It's very Twilight Zone-y in feeling, and I dig the effects. It looks really cool. Just a nice wooden staircase in nothingness. I like that a lot. They climb down the stairs for quite a while. They're getting no readings, and what should they find? Suddenly, they're on the shore of a lake. As you can see, there's rings and some sort of moon in the sky, and this is explained. This is a lake on the planet Zalea. Ed gives I like this. So Zalea, as I mentioned earlier, super, super dense gravity, could crush a normal human being. They have to wear encounter suits. So being smart, Ed says that basically that, all right, we know this isn't real because if this was the real Zalea, we would all been dead right now, except for the actual Zalean in the crew, Tala, who would probably be fine because this is her homeworld. So using a bit of logic, they determine that they can't possibly be in the real place. Obviously, based on what's happened so far, that doesn't seem plausible anyways, but I did like that little bit. And there's a raft. Now, Ed had been injured. Gordon had also been injured. So only 3 of them decide to take the raft. They see some sort of Morse code looking beacon across the water. 3 of them are going to take the raft across the water to investigate while the other 2 stay behind. Is anything going to go wrong? Well, I don't know. Of course I know. There's a giant squid and it pulls down Kelly into the water with some weird electrical tentacles. And that's not good. Now, I think this is a very beautiful shot. I don't know if this is a practical model of the squid, but I honestly think it looks pretty cool, especially with that light, not lens flare. I don't know what you call that. That light leak, I suppose. It's a cool lighting effect and it's a pretty cool looking abyss shot. Dig it. And she's being pulled down. Tala jumps in after her, swims down to save the day. And we see now Kelly has the glossy eye thing. 4 of our characters down where this has happened. Now, point of contention with a story here. They get back to the top of the water. Tala and Kelly both say their eyes glazed over. They both experience the same thing. We don't see this happen to Tala. She just says it happens. Depending on how investigative you guys might be, maybe you'll catch on to this point, or maybe you'll just let it slip by and realize, maybe they just didn't show it. So a new structure starts being built right before our eyes. It's going to be some sort of church/castle looking door. Ed says, "Enough of this bull. I'm done. We're done playing your games." He kind of announces to whoever might be in control of whatever's happening, "We're done. We're not playing your games. Stop it." Nothing happens. They decide to go off the beaten path instead of playing the game and entering the door in front of them. They trek through the wilderness for a while, find a cave, and what should be inside? Well, according to Bortus's scans, it's a holographic generator that's also got some sort of force field. After a little bit of playing around, they manage to knock the crap out of it, break it into pieces, and some sort of, holographic program just kind of, comes down around them. They're left in the sand with wreckage in front of them. They scan the wreckage, determine it is absolutely of Kalon design. We need to collect this crap, get up to the ship, because obviously the Kalon are planning something. They put this here probably to try and trap us or to learn from us. That's not good. There shouldn't be Kalon in this sector anyways. We need to get out of Dodge and report back to the Union ASAP. Go up to the ship, have their Dr. Finn here, medicine woman, scan their brains. I do like the visual of the brains where the humans, the Zelayan, and the Moclan all have different color brains and different, stuff on the panels. I do like that detail. I do like the extra detail they're putting into this. Basically, she claims that there was some sort of combination hologram / Neuralink or something, I guess she said. So they were kind of sharing a hallucination. She said it was akin to digital ayahuasca, I believe. So they were in a fake environment created through force fields and manipulations like holograms, but the brains of them were linked and filling in the rest of the details. So it was kind of a double whammy there. So they were filling in the blanks that the hologram wasn't really doing. And that's it. Mystery solved. The Kalon set this up. We foiled their plan. We got to get back to Union space because we need to analyze this stuff before the Kalon take us out. The admiral they contact decides to send a fleet of ships there to rendezvous with them to help get this stuff back to the Union and protect them in case the Kalon show up to finish us off because we've discovered their plot. Now, things get interesting even more. Isaac says these are not Union ships. Charlie obviously has a history, does not like Isaac, does not like the Kalon, says, no, how can you be sure? Obviously Isaac's lying. Isaac's like, I'm not lying. They're actually cloaked vessels of the Kalon. I'm telling you that right now. Lo and behold, they are. Oh crap, we're not getting rescued. We're getting attacked. How are our intrepid crew going to get out of this mess? Well, suddenly, something happens. Very, very strange. Tala is contacting the Orville. That's right, the Orville that's just being destroyed, having a giant battle for their lives against several Kalon. What the hell is she doing? Wasn't she just on the bridge? No, she's back in her shuttle. She never rendezvoused with the Orville. She's waiting for them to pick her up at the rendezvous spot, but they never showed up. She's trying to figure out where they are. John answers her call and says, Tala, you're down on the planet. We lost contact with you. What's going on? Guess what, everyone? Double fake out. They never escaped the planet. They never figured out the plot. They never got back to the Orville. That's right. They're still in whatever sort of game this is. Right before the ship is destroyed, the Kalon vessel just kind of, boop, everything freezes. And we finally think, okay, I don't know what's going on. Are we finally out of it? What's happening? Well, Tala stands up, and if you've been paying attention, she actually was the one that solved every situation. She was the one who never saw the glassy eyes, and we find out that she is not Tala. She is this Tron-looking character here, and this is where it comes into play if you've been following the Orville for a while. She is, as she explains to them, a super, 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 even beyond evolved version of a race of characters we met way back in season 1. There was this planet, they called it the interphasic planet, where I believe every 7 days or 7 years, it would, I can't remember the time frame, but every so often, I think every 7 days, it would pass through our space. And then it would transport back into its own reality, where it would advance a huge amount of time, hundreds of years, before it would come back into our space. So each time it phased out of our reality, they would advance further and further. What happened is we went down to investigate their planet. Kelly accidentally got seen. They developed a religion about her being some sort of goddess from, the heavens. Their whole society based themselves around her for a while. Isaac went to mitigate the damage. They eventually evolved past the Union. That's the last we saw of them, is where they were returning Isaac to us and saying, we've evolved past you. Not by much. I mean, they had transporter technology. They had beaming technology, a little more advanced, but they were still roughly on par with the Union, just a little higher. This now is about, I think she says, 50,000 years, even further past that. They continued evolving 50,000 years, well beyond physical limits, well beyond technology. They are, in essence, gods of a sort, very Q-like, if you want to think of that way. They have properties and abilities and all this stuff well beyond the reasoning of man. And they are trying to study what mortality is, because they no longer experience mortality, don't really get it. They're just one with the cosmos, and they're trying to study. And this reminds me a heck of a lot, as I said, of Q, but it also reminds me of two different beings from Star Trek TNG. There was the Nagilum creature, the big space face, that was also studying mortality by trying to kill off half the Enterprise crew. And there was also the other giant floaty head that he increased the abilities of Barclay, so that, to the nth degree, I believe it was called, so that the Enterprise could super fold space and warp to the ends of reality to meet this other giant floating head with the weird bump and like the tentacle hair, the big white face. And he's like, ooh, interrogative. Ooh, hierarchical structure. That guy, I don't remember his name. Kind of reminds me of that, where they're studying us, but they're so far beyond us that we're just kind of playthings to them. Also, the entire premise of this episode reminded me of that, I think it was Future Imperfect from TNG, where Riker was trapped in what he thought was the future. Then he thought it was a Romulan plot, but it turned out to be the psychic manipulation of an abandoned alien child who was just trying to, survive. So it seems like a lot of these different ideas that we've seen before, plus the Twilight Zone, plus just your typical surreal sci-fi story, a whole lot of different ideas wrapped up in one mystery, in one story. That I like. Now, I know a lot of you people are probably also fans of my, well, I don't want to say fans, but that have also been watching my Strange New World reviews. I was a little critical on Strange New Worlds recently for basically just recycling the same old Star Trek ideas. To that point, because I know it'll probably be brought up, I will say two things. A, the Orville even though it's based on Star Trek as far as philosophy and aesthetics and a whole bunch of stuff, it's his own universe. So every time they do something like this, even if we've seen it in other sci-fi franchises before, it is the first time we are seeing it within the Orville universe. So to that, I would say, let's say, we've seen similar stories in Star Trek, and Stargate, for instance. And even, let's throw in some of the lower tier stuff like Farscape. A lot of the same similar situations, but done through the lens of their own universe and their own franchise. That's a separate issue. When Strange New Worlds is doing it, I still don't think it's a bad idea. But it's like, okay, we've already seen this in Star Trek before. We would like to see something new. So that's the one difference. Not that I'm saying Strange New Worlds can't do it at all, because I'm liking it. The second point I would say to that is this one seemed to be like a twist off of what we had seen before. So it wasn't identical. It was just throwing about, 7 or 8 different ideas and kind of integrating them into a new story they wanted to tell based within their own universe. So I will say, yes, a lot of the points in this are derivative, but in some of the best ways, because for me, this is the type of sci-fi story I really like. The last episode was more horror based, which is fine. Horror is not bad. Horror mixes with sci-fi, fine. But I like the more surreal, the more the less realistic, the less reality based it is, the more interesting it is to me to, sit back and consider. And that's one of the reasons I like sci-fi. So they have this nice conversation. She basically tells them, because you were so entwined with our history, we thought you should also be entwined with our future. And that's why we chose you, a nice full circle for them. So whether or not we'll see these Tron people again, I don't know. I also am not entirely sure if they are separate individuals or if they've kind of all evolved into this collective consciousness that is filtering itself through this one being. So that would be interesting too, if they kind of, as a civilization, evolved into this giant collective being that is just creating a personality to interact with, because that's kind of like the idea of some of the philosophies out there where we're not actually individuals. We're all just one piece of the great spirit or whatever, being filtered through our own experiences. So when we're born, we come into the world to perceive things through the lens of our body. When we die, we go back to the one giant collective being. So that would be kind of interesting too, if that's where they're going with that. And we end up ending our episode with our main characters having this conversation with each other about mortality and, whether or not they would want to live forever. They've got differing views. Bortus thinks that it's part of life. It's a divine purpose for us to live and to die. That's part of the whole thing. Ed says, no, I want to be immortal because I can't stand the idea of not knowing what happens next. I want to know. I want to keep knowing what's going to happen even after I'm gone. They've got a conversation going about, you can't even picture what happens after life. The closest you can come is picturing like an empty void. But even when picturing that, you are putting yourself in the perspective of still existing outside of yourself. You can't perceive of yourself not being in existence because that's just inconceivable to our mortal minds. Kind of a nice note to end on. It wasn't like a sad note. It was just a very existential note. And I like it. I dug the episode. I think 3 very different episodes so far this season. The first one was a very personal story about loss, grief, suicide, that whole thing. The second story, a very horror and relationship-based situation. This one, a very existential, mortality-based thing. 3 different stories, 3 unique different types of stories, and we got to learn some of our characters more. I think they've made some bold decisions after this long wait to come back, and we haven't had that blast the doors off the hinges, sci-fi battle type thing, which a lot of people probably assumed we were going to get right out of the door here to, kind of hook people. But I think we've gotten great episodes, and if they keep this up, it's going to be a fantastic season. No real gripes. I mean, there was a couple contrivances in here, but most of what happened wasn't actually in reality. And if I think back, the scene of Claire explaining what was going on wasn't real Claire. So I'm not even possibly sure that's how it was happening. It wasn't a hologram. So I think it was actually explained that she was this Tron lady was actually able to create a sort of pocket dimension where all of this was happening, similar to how Q would do things. So it's definitely worth watching, definitely worth rewatching, and definitely worth spending some time just sitting back and analyzing and having a good time. But man, if you made it this far and you haven't watched the episode, what's wrong with you? Get out there and watch it. Anyways, been rambling long enough. Really enjoyed this episode. Really give it props. Probably my favorite episode of the Orville in a long time, if not at all. So do all the YouTube things, like, share, subscribe, leave comments, tell me how great I am, tell me how much I was completely wrong about this. Tell me what you think about the Orville, what you think they did wrong, what you think they can do next. Give me comparisons to Star Trek, whatever you want. Love to hear from you. Until next time, have a good time. I'll talk to you later.